Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Stand Up Taller podcast with your hosts, Al Martin and Neil Berliner.
Hey, everybody, Al Martin here with the one and only top-selling author, Neil Berliner. Neil, how you doing today?
Well, it's a good day, I guess. I mean, last week I went on to Amazon and a few friends of mine and we came up with this idea for a joke book. And the joke book idea was we take events from recorded history and we just goof on them with current day kind of topical jokes. And I'll hold it up. It's called Ha Ha History. So it's actually my friend Mike Morse from The Stern Show and The Tonight Show is one of the authors, and Joey Novick is a New York comedian and entertainment lawyer, and Ron Bo Phillips is the fourth author. So for a year, we spent time looking at history websites and finding out all kinds of events in politics and sports, entertainment and music and technology and science. And we just made jokes from January 1st to December 31st, a joke for every date of the year. So you can look up your birthday joke if you want. But anyway, I went on Amazon a couple of weeks ago to see if it was up there. And lo and behold, it was the #1 new joke book release. I couldn't believe it. Fell off my chair. And I don't know how it got that way, but I guess it must have struck a chord with somebody. So we'll see how it goes. And as a matter of fact, Al, I'm going to be doing a live show at your club to celebrate the book and to do a book signing at the Broadway Comedy Club on April 21st, Friday, April 21st.
And hopefully no pipes freeze or anything.
There you go, vaults. There you go.
Vinnie,
the last I'll tell you. Want me to tell them the last time I did a show at your other club, the Greenwich Village Club, an hour before the show, I get a call from Al, and he says, "Neil, little problem. You sure you want to do this show? What's going on? A pipe broke in my club. It's flooded." I go, "All right, great." But the show went on. It happened, right, Alan? It did happen.
Yeah. Listen, in true New York style, we got in there, we wet vacked, we cleaned everything up. Actually, after your show, we opened up for ice skating in the venue from frozen water. But hey, yeah, that's New Yorkers. We make do,
The funniest thing about that show is that right before the show, I get a call from my assistant who I had had dinner with the night before, and he's got COVID symptoms.
Oh, great.
I'm supposed to MC this show. It was for the place that I work at. I'm the medical director at a clinic in Brooklyn. So it's like this big show that they wanted me to do for all the staff at this clinic. And I can't do the show because I might have COVID. I didn't want to give the whole clinic COVID. So I couldn't even do the show. But anyway,
wow.
Let's go on to better topics. We have a great guest, a multi-talented guy who's had a great career in many different facets of entertainment. Vinnie Favale is here with us. Hey, Vinnie.
Hey, guys. Good to be here. Good to see you, Al.
We've never met, Vinnie, but I was reading up on you, and what an incredible career. I mean, like you started or you were in on the ground floor with Comedy Central, and then you moved on to other properties as well, late night TV. Incredible run. How do you make that jump from Brooklyn College and all the way up to
It's crazy. It's crazy because none of it makes sense at the time, but when you look back and you kind of like when the book is almost written, it's done now, the life story, not done, but a good chunk of it. And you go to the origins. What are my origins? And like we were talking when we started, like you guys I grew up in Brooklyn. When I went to Brooklyn College, in fact, I was always interested in television primarily, and by default comedy, because like you guys, I'm sure, I grew up with WPIX, which was the home of Abbott and Costello on Sunday mornings, right? Abbott and Costello meet.
And Officer Joe Bolton.
Okay, I'm going to get to that. So you got the icons. You got Abbott and Costello every Sunday morning, right? Then late at night, in the early 70s, they started to run the half-hour Abbott and Costello TV show. Remember that one? That was like with Sidney Fields. Seinfeld gives that show credit for inspiring the Seinfeld show, and I'll get to that connection because I did something with Seinfeld when I was at Comedy Central about that. But so I grew up watching those shows, like you said, obviously Joe Bolton and the Three Stooges, right? Another iconic. The Million Dollar Movie.
Oh
Remember
yeah,
the Million Dollar Movie?
yeah.
Which I mentioned these things with these guys here, which is great because their recognition is incredible. Most people, they glaze over. What the hell's the Million Dollar Movie?
As
Basically, the
soon as
Million
you
Dollar
said
Movie
that,
was
hey, as soon as you said Million Dollar
was
Movie, the music played in my head. That old, the
yeah,
theme.
right, with the Gone with the Wind, the
Yeah,
Laris
yeah,
theme,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Which I didn't know at the time was that, but for people who don't know, the Million Dollar Movie, they would show the same movie every night. Like that was that, at least sometimes that was their strategies because there was no VCR, there was no on demand, there was no Netflix, so it was kind of a weird on demand. You knew that there was going to be a movie, and a lot of times there were comedies, and then the Channel 7 movie. Remember the 4:30 movie? That was on every afternoon. And they'd have Elvis Presley Week or Beach Blanket Bingo, Frankie Avalon and the Net for the Cello. And the majority of these things to me were all comedy, or they seemed like that's what I gravitated towards. So I love television, I love comedy, and when I went to Brooklyn College, I wanted to major in some form of entertainment. I had no idea. I was way over my head. The high school I went to was a vocational technical high school called William E. Grady in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn. And for those of you who don't know, it's an all boy trade school for people who have no other options in life. Now that I think I had options, but I'm a child of immigrants. I'm first generation, so as my wife jokes, English was my second language. Didn't have much guidance in the education field other than my parents, God bless them. And I don't know how they paid for it, but we were five, and three of us, the three younger ones that were born in America, all went to Catholic school for kindergarten to eighth grade. I went to St. Finbarr's in Bensonhurst. And you go to Catholic school, then high school comes up. Where am I going to go? No guidance. I went to a freaking trade school, right? And I was afraid of electricity. I had no knowledge of plumbing. I did 4 years of a trade with no academics. So when I went to Brooklyn College, I was like Tarzan in the jungle. I had no idea who I was, what I was doing. But my major was television and radio. Do you remember? That's how they called it back then. It wasn't communications. It wasn't new media. And yeah, so that's how I got my start in that. While I was at Brooklyn College in my senior year, I was fortunate enough to get an internship. This is like 1979 at WNBC radio. Okay, so I'm interning now while I'm still at Brooklyn College, and I can't believe it. I feel like I went from the little leagues to I'm at Yankee Stadium. I go into 30 Rockefeller Center every morning to do my internship on the second floor, where Imus reigned. Imus at the time was the morning guy. This is pre-MTV, but a lot of the people that were working there eventually started MTV, and I followed them along. But anyway, while I was there, in my time there, I was there till like 82, and Letterman had a morning show. Remember Dave's morning show that got canceled because
He seems so out of place in the morning, He seems so out of place on that.
They tried to find I think they just tried to find a place for him, like a holding deal, until Tom Snyder's contract was up, so then they can give Letterman the 12:30 slot. But a fascinating thing at that time, for me at least, was there was a point in time when my internship turned into a job. So now I'm working at NBC. I'm working in the radio division. Saturday Night Live is being done from that building. Letterman's office was right down the hall from mine, a temporary office. His morning show had been canceled, and like I said, he had a holy deal. So we would see each other in the hall. It was that head nod. The office head nod when you don't really know the person, but you see them every day, so you feel like, hey, how you doing? Yeah, you're on your way to the bathroom, or you're on your way to the water cooler, or whatever. But there were many times where Dave and I would find ourselves at the window on the second floor that looked in on WNBC's radio show, which was being done live wherever the DJ was. And the NBC tour at the time, that was like a very cool stop for the pages to make, to say, and this is where they do the morning show. And you'd look in, you'd see the engineer in front of you, and to the left, you'd see the host. And at that time, believe it or not, Howard Stern had just come to NBC AM. And, it caused a lot of excitement. And we all knew about it just from reading about him in the paper, all the things he was doing. And I remember Dave and I not talking to each other, not being buddies or anything. It was just a natural thing to just kind of stop while you're waiting for the elevator, just kind of wander over and say, hey, what's going on over here today? And we'd see this circus, because Howard was on in the afternoons back then, and it was incredible. There would be girls in bikinis. Remember, Howard would bang the drum all day long and applaud, and it was just like, they made it sound like there were 100 people in the studio. It was just really Howard, Robin, Fred, and an engineer. So, all of that kind of put together, and then just riding the wave. People left NBC Radio, started MTV. I had a job there, so I had a kind of a front row seat to the origins of MTV. And then I was, I had my career moved up pretty well. And when I heard HBO was launching a comedy channel, now this is HBO was going to launch a 24-hour comedy network, and it was going to be called The Comedy Channel. Remember that?
Yeah, the Comedy Channel. Yeah, it wasn't
Comedy
Channel.
Channel.
It changed into Comedy Central, right?
Yeah, because at the same time, MTV said, "Hey, we want in on this," so they launched their own comedy channel called Ha. That was their idea.
Yes,
I remember that. Now the differences between the two networks were significant, although no one really cared. But HBO, ironically, was doing short form comedy. The idea behind Comedy Channel at the time was, we'll get VJs, just the way MTV has VJs, only they'll be comedians. They'll be different, personalities, and they will host 3-hour shows where they'll do two things. They'll be funny during their host segments as they introduce almost like a jukebox of comedy routines. And, our job was to build a library of public domain stuff, because a lot of stuff you couldn't run without the rights. And then the idea was, the loophole we found to run comedy clips from things like Caddyshack and Ghostbusters was to call it promotional. So if HBO was running Caddyshack, that gave us the license to clip it. And then, as long as we were promoting the fact that you could watch this very funny scene we're about to show you on HBO, that's how we got away with it. So that's really how I doubled down in comedy. And that was a great place to be, because, we ran Laurel and Hardy movies. We did a series. You guys remember Dead Comedian Society? That was hosted by Robert Klein.
I remember that.
Yeah, Dead Comic Society. Yeah, and we ran old silent movies. So, yeah, that's really how. And then what happened was, Comedy Central and Ha merged and became Comedy Central. And I was there for all of that. And one of the ideas that I had for Comedy Central helped put it on the map, which was really not an original idea, but it was basically taking the concept of what Mystery Science Theater. Remember that show? What those guys would do? We put that on Comedy Channel, and that was an incredible thing that we could take credit for. The network at the time could. And they made fun of bad movies. So my idea was, hey, we don't have money, we don't have a big budget, we need to get in trouble so people will notice us. Why don't we cover the State of the Union speech live? Because it'll be free. The cameras are already there. We don't have to pay anything. I naively thought, hey, let's just get the feed, because ABC runs it, CBS runs it, NBC, and I think CNN. Let's run it, but let's goof on the president the whole time. So we got Al Franken, who was at SNL at the time, to host it, and a bunch of comedians. And it was a bit of a train wreck in a good way. Like, we had never done any kind of TV like that before, any kind of production. Everything we did was reruns. So that was actually like, oh, wow, we actually have to have a set and all that. And we did it, and it was great. And that really helped my career a lot. And after that, in 96, I left there to head up late night for CBS. Where I worked with Letterman from 96 till the show went off the air.
Wow.
So you're very good friends, I bet, with Eddie Brill, right?
Love Eddie. Eddie's a great, and I wish I appreciated Eddie more at the time for what he was doing, because it's incredible now when you think about all the stand-ups that are big or different levels. A lot of these people made their debuts on TV because of Eddie, because he put them on. Eddie was the guy who booked all, for those who don't know, who booked all the stand-up for Letterman for many years. And he's a comedian.
You played a big role on Colbert, correct, in breaking in comedians on.
Well, what happened was when Dave left, I was still there, so I helped with the Colbert launch, the Late Show launch with him, and there was, I felt a need to carry on that stand-up tradition that we needed to do, continue to do that on the show, and there didn't seem to be a big affinity at the time for stand-up from the people I worked with at the Late Show, which was fine. I mean, they weren't against it, but no one was really going out and getting it done. And my job as a network executive was truly just to guide and give thoughts and ideas, and then they would do it and make it better, or do it in their own way, whatever, if they had strong opinions on it. But so I took the reins of that, and I hired a terrific producer and booker, Jessica Pilot, who she went into all the clubs and found me all these great up and coming comedians, and some of them that we booked were people that Eddie had booked already years earlier. But it was a nice mix of continuing what Eddie had done and then trying to find new voices, and I think we did a good job of that. Stand up, and I just want to get to your book for a second, Neil, because I think you really undersold how great your book is. Because I was looking at it, and the idea to frame it around this day in history and be committed to that, of doing it like literally every single day of the year, coming up with jokes that could have been told in the 60s and the 50s and 80s. They're great. I mean, it's like, I loved reading the ones from events around the 70s, because I was reading it in Johnny Carson's voice in my head. I was imagining that, and what you guys did, you probably know all this, but for your listeners who don't, Bob Hope gets a lot of credit, deservedly, for pretty much inventing or making the monologue a thing. Okay, he was doing it long before Johnny Carson, and a lot of it was topical. How about that so and so, and then the joke would follow that, and then you continued the tradition. Mort Saul continued that by going on stage with the newspaper. Remember, Mort Saul would have the New York Times, and he'd become that thing. And I specifically went to see if you guys would do the JFK. But would you do a joke around JFK, right? Tragedy plus 5 equals comedy. And I was happy to see that you did the Warren Commission joke, which was right out of, like, that would have been a Mort Saul joke, which I love it. That they concluded they should keep it popped down.
Exactly.
So, perfect punchline.
I'm so flattered, you boy. You really read it. My God, wow! I'm so flattered.
I have a great idea. Okay. Promote it, but go ahead, Al.
Now let's hear your great idea.
Oh, okay. Amazing idea, and you'll make the news for this. And this is kind of what I'm good at, by the way. And I'm going to give you this for free. AI technology is through the roof right now in every way. You could almost have an AI system where you tell it to come up with a book like this. It wouldn't be as good naturally, but you should feed your jokes, some of them, select ones, as an experiment, into an AI machine and say, okay, read me this joke in Johnny Carson's voice. Read me this joke in Bob Hope's voice. Read it in Mort Saul's voice. I want a laugh track. Stop. You literally tell it all these things, and you give it examples. For example, this is Johnny Carson's voice. It might even know it, but you give a sample joke. This is Johnny Carson telling a joke. I want the laughter, like a 1970s comedy show coming in. This could all be done in minutes, and then you feed it your joke. It's telling your joke, the joke that you wrote, in that voice. And you release one of those on Twitter every day, people are going to go. I think it would be a really good promotion
Well,
for the
thank-
book. And if
well,
you don't
one
do
of my
it, I'm going to do it.
well, one of my sons is at Google, so I can very easily accomplish this in about 10 minutes. So
Tell him you want to do. He'll know exactly what you're talking about. You want to get some AI voices to do celebrities, and you're not doing anything. These jokes are very safe. They're in a good way. That's a compliment. They're jokes that you could tell. But anyway, I just love the idea of bringing your book to life, and it becomes the ultimate book on tape when you think about it.
Well, let's make it the next Vinnie Favale project. That would be fine by me.
I'm telling you, I'll help you promote it. What we should do is do a couple, and I might do some. If you don't do it fast enough, just for you, I might just do one. I want to go because I'm exploring for myself. There's things that I want to do with some of this AI technology. I'm in the process right now of writing a book, and it's a massive project. But as I'm done with each section, now I'm thinking, like you could actually get an AI person. You could say, I want this thing that I've written be read by a male in his 60s who might look like a college professor and has a light British accent, and they'll come up with an actual person that looks like that.
Well, listen to this. My publisher sent me an email saying you should have an audiobook. It's like a group email to all the authors, and it said we have 1,000 AI voices of every ethnicity, age, name it.
Right.
They're not human beings. You don't even have to use a person anymore.
I know, no, it's crazy, and you're going to go one. And you're going to go one better, Neil, because you're going to trade off of Johnny Carson because you can do all this stuff. It's parody. It's not like you're selling this stuff. This is all gimmicky and marketing for your book.
There's no rights that you can't be sued because it's a parody, because it's a satire.
And it's your material. You know what I'm saying? It's not like you could probably have an AI. I read this now where some people are using AI for evil. Where they're doing deep fakes and they've got. You could have. Howard Stern would do a crude version of it. Richard. I think it was Richard and Sal would take the audio tape of like a Dolly Parton book on tape where Dolly Parton reads her own book, and they put it into their computer system, and they would just basically rearrange things, and it would sound almost robotic.
It's so funny you bring this up, Vinny, because I was just yesterday telling my wife that they did it with Mitch McConnell's book, and every word that he said and chopped them up, and they regenerated, and then you would get Mitch McConnell saying, "I love cock and I want." I want to suck, and Mitch McConnell saying all that stuff, But I just yesterday talked about it with my wife. It's so funny.
But you could. So this new way to do it now is 1,000 times better than that because it's more organic. It's not editing little things where it sounds like a choppy. It's smooth and it's flowing, and I can't wait to hear some of your jokes done that way because I think it'll be a lot of fun. Awesome. And you could even, like I said, you could do a visual that goes with it. And if you tweet one of those every single day of the year, you're not tweeting every joke, or maybe, you would be, but it would be great. I think it would be a great way for people.
Well, do you know Mike Morse from the Stern Show? Mike,
I know the name. I know
he did a lot of parodies. He wrote Ralphie Cakes, and he wrote for a lot of the books, and he did all the illustrations. He did fantastic illustrations for this book too.
Amazing. And those illustrations, by the way, could be what you see on the screen in a static way for some of the monologue jokes. So if Carson is telling a joke that's clearly from the 70s, you could have that have this great app called Tune Me, and I haven't stopped using it, where it'll take any image and turn it into this really cool cartoon, different variations of it. And it changes it enough. I think that it's considered transformative. And again, it's another copyright thing that I think you'd be fine with because it's all parody. But Mike would have a field day with that.
Yeah. We can talk about this later because I don't want this to become the Neil Berliner show.
We're having a meeting about your book.
I appreciate it. But I want to talk about the fact that you are so multifaceted. I mean, you wrote a book on the internet decades ago, correct?
I'm very excited about that. You know that.
Talk about that.
I did. Yeah, it was 1996, my last year at Comedy Central, And the way things work in just about any kind of industry. There was a period of time where I was really riding high. Comedy Channel becomes Comedy Central. Part of a team, not just me, part of a strong creative team. We put the network on the map. Blah 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 blah. We do good, and then our boss gets fired, and new bosses come in and actually take it to the next level. They did a great job, but unfortunately, most of my colleagues were fired. I wasn't fired, but I was essentially demoted in that, like, okay, well, we don't quite know what to do with you. We'll figure it out. And my whole department was gone. It didn't report to me anymore. And I remember it was the early days of the internet. And I was like, me and another executive, Art Bell, the guy who wrote the book about the arts, because he's the one that had the initial idea for a 24-hour comedy channel. Art and I said, we were in a similar position. Hey, let us try that new internet thingy, whatever that is. I mean, this is AOL time. You've got mail. This is a long time ago. And we built a website. We had some really good tech savvy people. And I grew up like you guys with Mad Magazine. Remember, movies we like to see, things we'd like to, parodies. And it just hit Art and I immediately when we were like, well, Comedy Central has a book deal with Simon and Schuster. Why don't we do a book? What should the comedy book be? And it was at the beginning of us trying to do these things. And I was like, well, we had started to do some fake websites, fake web pages, because the time was a novelty. You got to remember, nobody had a website. So if you had, the idea was, imagine if Martha Stewart had a website. Oh my God, you would come up with all these ridiculous jokes for just a homepage, all these little silly little things that tied into Martha Stewart, who would never have a website, right, at the time. When Madonna announced, I don't know if you remember, that she was looking to get pregnant and she wanted, to find the perfect guy to impregnate her, right, through a sperm donation. I remember going, oh, let's come up with a website, Desperately Seeking Semen, which was a parody on Madonna's movie, Desperately Seeking Susan, right? And when we did that, we were like, oh, this could work. This could work. We should do a whole book of these websites we'd like to see. So that became Websiting. It's a collection of websites we'd like to see, and it was so much fun. It was kind of, I would imagine, like when you were writing your book, how much fun it was getting together with some like-minded writers like Art Bell and I and another guy, Dr. Dave Cohen, who's a really funny guy, and we brainstormed on all these different things. We had a lot of images. I went to, like, this is again pre like Google, pre-internet being the place to go to source stuff. I went to this archive house that had thousands of photographs and folders looking for inspiration. It's just like, okay, I had this idea where, what if the mafia had a website, the worldwide, so it's like, okay, this is great. Roger's got a website, right? And then it would have a couple of little things on the page that were jokey with icons, but I need a good image. And I remember seeing this, like that classic black and white photo of 6 mobsters, handcuffed with raincoats over their handcuffs and covering their eyes, leaving the courthouse in custody. And I'm like, oh, that's the homepage, So that's how I did that book, and it was great.
Well, that concept sounds like it's right out of the pages of Mad Magazine,
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I learned there's nothing original. There's nothing original. It's what you could do to take it to the next level, or hopefully half as good as whatever the original was. I mean, SNL is still, I think, a great show. Everybody loves to criticize it. But, your show was doing SNL in the 50s. They were doing, I think, every week for they didn't take any time off. It's Caesar and Gene Coco and that incredible, writing staff over the years. So yeah, nothing is new, and that's why, like, your book is so great, because it's comfort food. It's those are jokes, are certainly, they're new jokes, but they're told in a style that's very reminiscent of the era where a lot of those jokes would have originated. 70s.
Well, let's try an experiment. What's your birthday? We'll go to your birthday joke. We'll see if
yeah, let's do that. Yeah, let me get my digital. September 4th, it's September 4th.
Oh, yeah, the year doesn't matter. So, okay, so let's see if September 4th is a decent joke. I'm out on a limb here. Let's see.
Yeah, I know, really. And then who wrote it?
Okay, September 4th, 1842. Work on Cologne Cathedral recommences after a 284-year hiatus. Contractor apologizes, claims his guys got held up on a kitchen renovation that ran long.
Okay, that is beautiful. That's beautiful. That is worth the journey it's taken to get to that punchline. When your jokes are in bold, what does that signify? There's some that are bold in the Kindle
Oh no,
app.
it means there's an illustration that
Oh,
corresponds
got it, got
with
it.
an illustration.
Yeah, when you read these things sometimes on the phone, you kind of you gotta you see on the printed page. Got it, got it, got it. Okay, yeah, this is terrific. I love. Let's see. I looked, by the way, to see, and I think it's smart that you didn't do it. Oh, I love the melted clock joke, the Salvador Dali melted clock joke.
Yeah.
That was really good. But what I wanted to say is, I went to 9/11, and I noticed that you didn't do anything, which is completely understandable, unless I missed something, right?
I think we might have purposely avoided that, maybe.
Yeah, that.
I'm not
But,
sure.
but I mean, it's fascinating when you look at comedy because here you go, you got a JFK joke and the president got his head shot off, right? You've got Abe Lincoln, you got a friggin' Abe Lincoln joke, right?
Right.
So it's almost like if it's one person and they're famous and it's a long time, it's okay. If it's this collective, like you did, I would imagine you wouldn't do a Holocaust. There's nothing related to Hitler. Do you have any Hitler? Is Hitler in there?
Yes, I did. We did a Hitler joke, and the joke was that there was this emperor, some ancient emperor from the year 500 or something, and he was terrible, and he did all kinds of awful shit. But then he says, "Well, this is going to be nothing compared to 200 years from now when you're going to hear about some guy named Hitler or something like that."
Got it. Yeah, all right.
I don't remember exactly. It was something like that.
And we don't want to see an AI Hitler.
Oh
We
my God.
don't want that.
I disagree,
No, we want
Jason.
to avoid that. Yeah, but it would be interesting though to do different acts. Like if you have a joke that evokes a Yakov Smirnoff kind of vibe, you like because he was funny. There was, I mean, some of it was like, okay, rim shot, but it's funny, right? It made you laugh, and it was good enough for him to build his own theater in Branson. But you could do one in a Yakov voice.
The most famous one I remember was in Russia. There's no warning shots. Something like, we shoot the guy next to you. That's the warning to you.
Right.
In Russia, warning shot means we shoot the guy next to you. That's your warning.
Now I have a question for John, because I too have been hearing a lot about this AI.
Vinny.
Oh, sorry. Vinny.
That's okay.
I'll tell you why you said.
Where's
Jason,
John?
I'll tell you why you said that. His son's name is John. So so many people our age, he uses his kids' internet stuff and technology. So John's name is on there, right?
See, that's smart. And it's better for tax purposes too. But listen.
My son's name, right? He uses this. Thing. That's right. I forgot. That's so
is
funny.
there any fear that the AI will eventually murder us, like in the Terminator?
Yes, and their defense was AI didn't do it.
I love it. I could probably stand up in court.
You brought up the deep fake thing. It's very scary, actually, because now anybody, any famous, any world leader can be shown to be saying anything, and they can say anything.
They just did one with Ukrainian Zelensky. They did a video of him saying some crazy stuff, almost like Richard and Sal program, that Stern show.
You see, exactly. For Trump, we don't need it because he says his own stupid shit. But for other leaders,
I'm curious too, if I can ask a quick question, Vinny. I'm super. I'm Joseph. Nice to meet you. So I'm very interested when you talk about your radio time working at the radio division there. I myself am an enormous historian of radio, going back, Bob Laster in South Florida, Neil Rogers in Florida, going all the way up to Stern and Opie and Anthony and Ron and Fez and all those guys. And I'm super interested to hear your thoughts on, has podcasting like we're doing killed the radio star, similar to how they said video had in the past?
That's a really good question. I love radio. I grew up, like the older people on this Zoom right now, with radio. A lot of it was music radio, not a lot of talk radio. But here's what I'm I think podcasts have certainly taken over, but I have to tell you, I miss live radio. I
Mhm.
miss that morning live. That is classic Howard from the K Rock days when his show is great now. Don't get me wrong, the show is great now, even on Sirius. But there was something about he was on 5 days. He was on, I don't know how he did it. 6 in the morning till 11, some days, like 5 hours of not heavily scripted at all. Just a lot of stuff that was just coming from the moment. I don't know if this answers your questions, but I miss it. I listen to Conan's. I love Conan's podcast where the first 10 minutes of it, when they're just talking like in a Howard Stern kind of way, where this producer and his assistant are in there with him. I don't think podcasting will ever replace radio, even though it may be bigger. I think the sad takeaway is that people have no idea what they're missing when it
Mhm.
comes to live radio. I know there are mornings when we were promoting the constant. We did a podcast. My buddy Art Bell wrote a book called Constant Comedy on the Origins of Comedy Central, just to give you context. And so we did a podcast series where we interviewed all the people that helped us, put the network on the air. But when we did a promotional tour for the podcast, we had a great PR person, and she was booking us on every morning radio show. And I was pleasantly surprised that that was still a thing, And there was
Mhm.
one guy, Kid Chris, who I loved. He was on
Yeah.
Howard all the time.
Kid
He's
Chris.
the one. Kid Chris is the one who did the Ricardo Montalbano phone call. Ricardo, how are you? LeBlanc, River LeBlanc. Remember that? So I did his show, and he was so freaking funny. Now he's constricted. Any kind of broadcast radio, there's only so much that they could do in the margins. Howard, on the other hand, on radio was able to break all the rules, to push the line, and it really is a shame that all these people that were influenced by Howard, some that acknowledged it, some that didn't, and just stole from him. But it's sad that this wave of people that Howard influenced didn't go off and do their own great radio shows. And I mean radio, like live on the radio 5 days a week. There's remnants of it, I think. I think Jim Norton hosts a
Mhm.
pretty cool show on
Yeah.
Sirius. But I don't know, man. I just wish there was more. I wish there was a late night radio show like Howard Stern, where
No,
people.
I'm sorry, Vinny. You know what that sort of tells me in a way that I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on this. Al Martin here, by the way. So the fact that not a lot of people followed it maybe tells us how special Howard Stern actually was. I mean, because way before him, there was really nobody doing it. And after him, there have been some imitators, but I don't think at any level it all has been as great as he was at it. Maybe this is all just a testament why, he's so successful and so good at what he does.
I think a lot. I think that's absolutely true. And the thing about Howard that was groundbreaking, the stuff that preceded Howard, like Bob Grant and that kind of edgy radio. What Howard did, Howard took that but added a lot more self-awareness to it, a little tongue-in-cheek, and a hell of a lot of comedy, and opened it up to the phone callers. Like whereas Bob Grant might have a phone caller as a means to just spew some more anger, Howard would eventually make some of those phone calls part of the show.
And
They became.
and
What's that?
lesbian.
Yes, and that you can't go wrong with that. Absolutely.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, but that was a great question about radio, and I listen. even if they can't do it as good as Howard, what I do miss is the topicality. That's where I get it from Twitter. Twitter basically has become my radio. If you cultivate your followers as carefully as I do, right? Not your followers, people that you follow. Even people that you might not necessarily like, but they're almost like a combination of Howard Stern and crazy phone callers. It's just endless stream of topical stuff coming your way, and that's what Howard did. And I say that Howard was the original Twitter in a way, and David Letterman's show was the original YouTube. Think about it. you look at Letterman show as a 1 hour show, especially the 12:30 show, 1 hour show, right? No, it's hours that are made up of small segments. Stupid Pet Tricks is YouTube. That is
It's
YouTube.
true.
David
Yeah.
Letterman invented YouTube before it existed. Stupid Human Tricks, people doing silly things, celebrities saying, Cher calling Dave an asshole. Is now that would be a meme at the time. If Dave's 12:30 show had happened and Twitter existed at the same time, Dave, I mean, he is a rock star already for what he's done, but would have been it 10 times more at the time. Now let's go start a radio show.
Vinny,
That's what I'm trying to do.
one thing that comes to my mind, because you were there at the beginning of a lot of the late night comedy stuff, you were there at the beginning of Comedy Central. How do you think those genres would have been impacted by the nonsense that we have today? I own comedy clubs, so I see this right on the ground. But this political, I call it the cancer of political correctness. How did that impact you? I'm sure it was a big impact on the early days. And would Comedy of Central and these things been able to start today because of this political correctness?
I think they would have been able to start. What would they break through? That I don't know. At the time, in fairness, a lot of people didn't. We weren't that popular in the beginning, so we were doing stuff that was just screaming for attention to get in trouble. And that's why making fun of the president was something that you could do because it wasn't sexual in nature. There was no Me Too vibe to it. But now I think it would be hard. One thing we did get in trouble for, it's really interesting at the time, we made an Alzheimer's joke around Ronald Reagan at the time when it was just he's diagnosed, and it wasn't a great joke. It was a topical piece of comedy that we did, and it pissed off a lot of people to the point where I think Al Gore, I believe was vice president at the time, complained to Time Warner, which owned Comedy Central. Yeah. So to answer your question, I think it's hard. I think it would be hard. And that's why the stand-up world, I don't know how you deal with it when people are doing stand-up in public, but if someone records that and plays it out of context, like what happened with Michael Richards, there's a lot more to that than what people thought at the time, I think, in my opinion. It's a different environment, a live comedy club, something shot at the time on a flip phone. It was, really pre-smartphones, can be completely misconstrued, the concept behind the idea. So yeah, I think everything's hard. It's amazing that you're running a comedy club in this day and age. Or maybe that's a good thing. Maybe in theory, that's the only place you can have a safe zone for this thing.
To F off, if you're sensitive about any particular item in the world, don't come to a comedy club. I mean, this is the last bastion for me, at least I feel, where comics can be who they are. Are they going to tell a stupid joke once in a while? Absolutely. We could probably write a book similar to Neil's, Stupid Jokes Told Each Night at a Comedy Club, but I think we should defend the right for them to say it,
I don't know if Don, I lately I've been watching a lot of Johnny Carson clips. It's just in the algorithm. It shows up on YouTube. At the end of the day, we're watching our TV, it's like putting the radio on. Hey, let's put it on YouTube, see what's going on there. And I can't tell you how many times I watch the same Don Rickles moments over and over again. And they're so goddamn funny, but there's no way any of that stuff, or a good portion of that stuff, would work now, which is a shame because it's really funny. I think it's done in the right spirit of offending all. I think, I don't know, maybe that's a cop out, but yeah, you can't do that now.
Vinny, did you have any relationship with Matt Stone and Trey Parker in terms of them joining?
They came. Here's what I heard. We overlapped just a little. Okay. Do you remember their origin story, which is amazing?
Yeah, the VHS tape that had been passed around.
Yeah, the VHS tape. The Chris and Jesus versus Santa Claus. Their agent said, I want to do it. Brian, I forget, Graydon, I think, was the agent. Said, hey, yeah, could you come up with something for a Christmas thing? And they did that. And because he was an agent, it went to every player in the business. And
Yeah.
when they came to, became like this bidding thing. And when it came to them making a decision on where to go, I heard that they chose Comedy Central because we were the only ones that had the balls to do some of the things that, making fun of the president is a big deal.
Right.
Showing the State of the Union speech, having it on there, and having people disrespectfully, quote unquote, comedians talking trash about it. But especially I do remember one thing. This was, after I had left Comedy Central, I was at Letterman, and then while I was at Letterman, I started working with Howard Stern. So there was like a 3-year period where my day would start with Howard. Sometimes I'd even sit in, and then it would end with Dave. It was an incredible time for me, and I'll never forget it. But there was one point where the South Park guy said something in the news that Howard perceived as an insult. Now, I've learned since then, at the time I wasn't really sure, but a lot of it is wrestling. A lot of what Howard would do on the air, his anger. There were times where he was yelling at me, but there was a little wink in there. It's this is good radio. Just take it. And he would never betray that, which was great. Then after the show, you hug it out, and it was like, that's good stuff. But anyway, the Trey and Matt said something, pissed Howard off. Howard went on a long tirade. These guys would exist without me. Blah, 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 blah. And Matt and Trey took it seriously. And I got a call from a friend of mine at Comedy Central at the time, head of PR, great guy. And he said, hey, could you get a letter to Howard, personally hand delivered, so no one could, it'll get to Howard and no one else will see it. And I said, absolutely. So they gave me the letter, was sealed. Of course, I didn't open it. I was dying to open it, but I didn't. And I personally gave it to Howard. And I think that snuffed that little fire. So that's my story with them.
Okay.
But they're legends. I mean, they're icons, and they're still doing it.
And they're still going. They're from your era. They started back then. They're still on television. And in terms of political correctness, they're one of the few people who can get away. I feel like they haven't changed at all since 1996.
Yeah, Al, that should answer your question, right? If you could figure out a way to do the South Park way, right, or even the Family Guy way, right? They pushed the envelope a lot.
I think it's cartoons in general. Cartoons can get away with saying more.
It's like
if there's a cartoon, you can say anything.
You can get the dummy to say anything and people wouldn't get angry, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's what in 1980.
I'm sorry.
In 82, I did stand up. In 82, I did stand up, a total fluke on Letterman on this in the first year. In on in February, I was on in October, and I did it with like a ventriloquist act, like a hacky. I intentionally hacky. I did an act that you either laughed with me or at me, but you're guaranteed to laugh. I remember telling a really hacky joke that it was a double entendre, and I was like, oh, well, the sock puppet said it, so it wasn't me. I can get away with it.
Yeah. Did you have any contact or relationship with Andy Kindler, by the way? Because he was so big on Letterman.
Oh, I love Andy. He probably won't remember, but yes, I do. We brought him on to host a marathon that we were doing, and just the phone calls with him were. He's so funny, and he was on Letterman a lot. Eddie booked him on Letterman because Dave loved him, and I don't want to say he would bomb, but he was operating at a level that we were all laughing and nobody else was. I wasn't quite sure what was happening there.
Well, Eddie did better when he bombed. He did better when he bombed. It was funny when he bombed than when he succeeded.
Well, that's why they always have him do the state of the industry address over at the Comedy Festival because of that reason. He doesn't care, he just goes off.
Yep, so great.
And were you involved with the creation of The Daily Show?
No, that was all credit goes to Doug Herzog and Liz Winstead, the team that and also Madeline Smithburn, who worked on Letterman before, obviously, on the NBC show. Doug was smart. They was like, we need a show like Sports Center, but instead of making it's like an edgy kind of comedy news thing, as we all know, and he found the right people to do it, and the first host was Greg Kilborn from Sports Center.
Yeah. Are you in touch with anyone over there now?
I'm sorry.
No. No, I'm trying to think. No, everyone is long gone. It's, I look at that as just like it was a great college for me. For a college of life, college of comedy. The friendships I've made, I still have a lot of them. And a lot of those people went on to do great, great, incredible things. And we had a lot of them on our podcast, Constant Comedy, to do a plug for that. Talking about those old days.
So, Vinny, we're sort of coming up against the end of the time for this episode, but anything today other than the book, other things that you're working on that you want to talk about or promote?
Well, I'd love to promote my website, vinniefavale.com, VINNIE Favale.com, where I do blog posts, observations. Some of my history is on there. The book I'm working on right now is called Do You Hear What I Hear, which is the complete history of Christmas music from the early days till now. And
I saw on your website, you have tons of Christmas albums from way back on your website.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm fascinated by in telling the story of Christmas music. I'm literally telling the story of entertainment. I'm going from, did you know Jingle Bells was originally written for minstrel shows, for blackface performers? Like, you wouldn't know from the lyric, but that's a fact. And there's so much interesting imagery that goes with that. So yeah, it's been incredible, but it's overwhelming. And I'll be done hopefully sometime next year. But yeah, so that's what I'm working on 24/7. That's what I do.
I guess to close out, I just want to mention one more statement about your versatility. You've gotten a Peabody Award. You've written musicals, correct? You wrote 2 musicals also.
Yeah.
Wow.
One was
incredible.
About, grief. One was
one.
It was
Hereafter. That was how we deal with the losses in our lives. Yeah.
Yes.
And I did that off Broadway. We did that off Broadway. That was great. We did it off Broadway. Danny Aiello starred in the movie. I shot the movie of it, like an extended movie short of it. I finished all of his scenes. He died about a year after I was wrapped with him. So that stuff is done, but I never finished the film. It's a shame because it's beautiful, and I will eventually finish it. But I have Danny Aiello's last performance on film, and it's breathtaking. He sings.
That was called Hereafter, right? That was called Hereafter?
Hereafter musical, yeah. And it ran in Argentina. It was in Spanish. It was a big hit. It was a bigger hit over there, actually, than here. I'm big in Argentina. I can't walk the streets of Argentina.
All right, well, listen, this has been a fantastic episode, man. This has become what we call on this podcast a 2-parter.
Oh my God, I love it.
Part 1, Vinny, and part 2, Vinny. So also, I'll give you a call about some projects. I want to talk to you about some stuff.
This is great, and I'm gonna mess around with the AI stuff if you don't. And I won't do anything with it.
I'll give you a call.
It's yours, but
definitely. All right, great.
Cool. Well, Jason, good meeting you. And that's Mike, right? Is he your producer, Mike? What's his name? Or Joe?
Joseph, Joe, whatever you like.
Joseph. It says stand up taller. So I'm Jonathan, and you're stand up taller. I'm Vinny / Jonathan, and you're Joseph / stand up taller.
And just one word about Jason Scoop. Jason's one of the best impressionists in the country. He won Dana Carvey's
unbelievable
first impression.
What do you do? Okay, give me some. Come on, Jason.
Now look, what we're gonna need to do is sign a bill. That's a little Obama.
I love that.
And I can do Bill. How you doing, man?
Give him some comedians.
The thumb.
Hey, Jason.
My State of the Union. Yeah.
Jason, give him some Cat Williams and Bill Cosby. They're awesome.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are here on the Stand Up Motherfucking Taller Show. And you see, when you're in the penitentiary and you're in the place and you're doing your thing with Vinny. And I had a great relationship with him at Comedy Central.
Oh, man, if people could see your face, that is awesome.
Thank you, brother.
Awesome. Great job.
And speaking of people say when I do this guy, we gotta hunt down the evildoers. we're gonna smoke them out of their caves. Al Qaeda.
Well, for
beautiful,
multiple personalities, Vinnie Favale, what a great guest you've been. Neil Berliner with his great book, and Joseph, our erstwhile producer. Al Martin here. Thanks, and see you next week, everybody.
See you next week, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Bye,
Take
people.
care.